collaboration with the Cyprus Mail, this is the Cyprus News Digest with Rosie Haralambous.
Coming up this week, the Minister of Transport outlines his plans for improving our public transport system.
We hope to offer an improvement on two things. One is travel time. If you can reach your destination faster than what you would do with your car, then you might choose to ride a bus. If it's cheaper than a car.
And a new bill is being prepared in Parliament to cover the gaps in current legislation as regards revenge porn.
To establish a legal obligation for internet, electronic and digital service providers to immediately delete such material.
We've discussed the issue of public transport on the island many times on the programme, and we now have a brand new Minister of Transport. He's joining us on this week's programme. He is Alexis Vafiadis. Alexis, it must be one of your priorities, I imagine, so can you start by outlining what you're going to prioritise to get our public transport where it needs to be, particularly when we're looking at things like the Green Deal?
Yeah. It is a priority, and it's a priority not only because of the Green Deal, but because the people have had enough. They're really desperate in the streets. They queue for hours, not only in Nicosia, but in Limassol as well. So, Paphos and Larnaca are a bit better off, but they have a problem as well. Major issues in Limassol and Nicosia. So, I think public transport is the way forward for us. It's our only way of taking cars out of the road network, which at the end of the day will alleviate all the problems we have because of congestion in the streets. It will help us reduce our carbon footprint because fuel consumption will be much less. So it's actually our only option is public transport, and we're working very hard on how to improve the service, not only bus routes and bus frequency, but also the customer experience, the passenger experience, and starting from the minute they decide to leave the house and they decide to go somewhere, they should be able to know when the bus is coming, when they will reach the destination, whether they need to walk for a while or take their bike for a while or a scooter. So we're working actually in creating this experience, this public transport experience.
It's going to be costly, and it's also going to take quite some time, because if you look at the wider bus network, I'm thinking of even things that recently has been online on social media, things like the lack of proper bus shelters, old people standing in the sun. I've just walked here to the ministry and it's hot. So there are health issues as well, aren't there?
Oh, of course there are. I mean, I think the issue of bus stops falls within the passenger experience as far as I'm concerned, because it's if you have to stand in the rain or stand under the sun, you will think twice about using public transport. So we have to improve that experience. And actually, quite recently, we received tenders for installing 3,000 bus stops all over Cyprus. It's a 60 million euro project, which is huge. It's really huge. And we hope to start installing these bus stops in January. And then every year we'll be installing more and more.
So how long will it take until, like I say, the outlying areas, because I presume you will start in the urban hubs where most people already do get buses, but then quite a lot of people live out in villages and they have to get a bus to work, for example. So again, if it's going to take 4, 5, 6 years?
It is going to take 4, 5, 6 years, but we also have another incentive, another program in place whereby we pay for all bus stops. The government gives them for free, actually, for all communities or municipalities, wherever they are in Cyprus. If they decide to install a bus stop, they bring us the invoice, we pay them. We have a design. Okay, it's not the new design we're including in the 60 million euro project, but it's got a seat, it's got a cover, and it can be moved to another location if in the future we want to install a new bus stop there.
But it won't be a smart bus stop. Now, I remember talking,
Yes.
you tell me how many years ago he was minister, to Marios Dimitriadis. I mean, it must be 10 years or so. And he was saying, yes, we're going to put all these smart bus stops. And I remember travelling to Sweden where every bus, it's going to be here in 2 minutes. And blow me, in 2 minutes it is there. And the next one is coming in 3.5 minutes. And it does. That's the sort of thing we need if we're going to persuade people that it's as convenient as well as cheaper than your car.
Of course. We will be having electronic screens at some bus stops. I mean, in the really busy ones, there will be this information, but not everywhere. That will have to come with another program. What you can do, though, is use your application on your phone or smartphone, and all buses are equipped with GPS service, and you can follow the route of the bus on your mobile phone, and you will know when it's coming in case you're at a bus stop where there is no electronic screen to inform you of the arrival time. So this is possible today. It will not be on every bus stop, but we really hope people can use the smartphones to get this information.
Now, do you, in all honesty, think that, let's say we have this system up and running, certainly in the towns, that it will persuade Cypriots to leave their car at home? There is a huge mindset here, just from if you drive past a kiosk and there's a car outside with its lights flashing, which is Cypriot for, I'm only going to be a minute, even though it's a double yellow line. You're laughing, but it's true. We all know this.
It is.
And they don't want to walk even from the parking space of the kiosk.
That's the local mentality.
How are we going to change that?
Okay. We hope to offer an improvement on two things. One is travel time. Okay, if you can reach your destination faster than what you would do with your car, then you might choose to ride a bus. If it's cheaper than the car, then
which it certainly is, because nobody takes into account the cost of car ownership,
Yes.
even if it's only used to drive to work and back.
Exactly. So there is a cost there. So we aim to, we will be sponsoring bus tickets, and we do this today. We will keep on doing it, and it will be cheaper to use the bus rather than use the car. You know, there's the express lane that starts from Alhambra and comes to Nicosia. So we already have a bus and park and ride area there, where people from all the rural area down there, they park their cars there, and then they ride the bus into town. We will be using this prototype in other areas as well, at the new Gasipi Stadium, in the Makarios Stadium. So people will be able to, as they're coming into town, drop the car off at a central area, which it will be a secure parking area, and ride a bus into town to work. Now, this cannot apply to everybody. It will not apply to everybody, but we are hoping it will apply to everybody that has one arrival time in the morning, early in the morning, let's say between 7 and 9, which is a peak time, and then a departure time which lies within the next peak time, which is around 4 and 5 in the afternoon. So if we can get all these people working in banks and the government and stuff to ride these buses, this will have an impact on traffic congestion.
Right, the other thing is that you may get a bus, but it won't go exactly to the area of Nicosia that you want to get to, for example, without having to change. And then if you look at the way people in Northern Europe do this, I mean, if you're on the London Underground, there are people with their bikes or their scooters, and they take public transport that far, and then they hop on their bike or their scooter for the last several hundred yards or whatever it happens to be. But we have a problem now because of the laws we've introduced about who can ride a scooter where.
Yeah, well, buses, the new buses, will have the facility where you can hook up your bike, take it off when you reach your destination. So that will facilitate micromobility as well. So you will be able to take your scooter on the bus. Okay, you need to wear a helmet. That has been criticized, that it reduces mobility, but even by saving one life, one might argue that it's worth it.
Okay, we won't get into road safety because that's a whole other topic. But the problem is, I'm on the bus with my scooter, and where the bus drops me off nearest to my work is an area where I'm not allowed to ride my scooter.
Yeah, that's a problem.
It's a huge problem if you want to make this system work.
Yeah. So micromobility is a huge parameter in the success of this project. So we do have in place programs that we will be doing bike lanes and bike roads, and right now we're working on connecting the universities to each other and to the old part of town, to the center of town. And after that we will proceed with other areas as well. So bikes and micromobility in general are a huge parameter in this, and we need to facilitate it.
But you need to facilitate those scooters. Now, I know as a car driver, not a scooter rider, that yes, some of them do whiz around and it's quite off-putting when you're on the road. But at the same time, if you're going to put into practice this idea that it's a much cleaner form of transport, then they have to be able to get off and ride through. Apparently the rules are different in each municipality. Well, that's ridiculous. Can't you do anything to change that so that this is an alternative to finish off your public transport?
I totally agree with you on that. We need to have one rule of law everywhere so that everybody knows they will not be breaking the law if they move from one municipality to the other. It's something we need to work on.
Do you have hopes that you can work on it during your tenure? I mean, all these things take time because they have to go through parliamentary committees and then everybody disagrees and everybody wants to do other things. How long do you reckon is a feasible time to think?
You need to start somewhere. One of the things we're trying to do is make public all planning matters. And why is that? Because if I make public a plan to introduce bike lanes, for example, and it's there, it's public knowledge, I mean, the next minister, he can change it if he wants. But since it's public knowledge, he or she will need to justify why they're doing it. They might have a very good reason for that. So, and by all means, change it if you have to change it. But people will know what the plan was before. They will need to know why you're changing it. And that guarantees engagement, people engagement. And we need popular engagement in all these matters.
All right, I know I can't keep you much longer, but I do have one other question I have to put to you. You're talking about discouraging people from using their cars. Why are we building more and more roads? Because it's a bit like moving house. If you move into a place with more cupboard space, you get more stuff.
Yes.
And it's well known that as you increase the road space, you thereby increase the number of cars. So it's counterproductive.
Exactly. You can never build roads fast enough to facilitate the number of cars which are being added in the roads every day. We estimate that by 2030 we will have 50,000 more cars in the streets, and each car generates at least 4 rides a day. So you're talking about 200,000 rides per day in our road network. It cannot take that. So what we're doing is completing necessary road network, what's considered to be necessary to facilitate easy access and financial sustainability and resilience. So we think that we will not be able to ask people not to use their car. They will be using it. So we need to have a good network for that. But we also, at the same time, need to encourage people to use the bus.
Yeah, but you said at the beginning that if it took them less time on the bus than in a traffic jam, they'd be more tempted to get on the bus. But that's what I'm saying, is you're building roads to make it easier for them to use their cars.
A better road network. Okay, let's examine how many people will use the bus and how many people will use a car. We estimate right now we have 3% of passengers riding buses. Okay, in Malta it's 20%. If we can go to 10%, it's going to be huge for us. So we're still going to have 90% of cars in the street. So the next bet is, how can I convert that to cleaner fuel, electric or whatever we will have in the future. So we will be having cars, and it will be quite impossible to get people totally off their cars. It will be more expensive to use a car. It will be more of a inconvenience to find a parking space at some point in the future, not today. So we need to finish off with our road networks to increase resilience, financial resilience within communities.
Okay, but I would just suggest to you one final thing is that in order to make people think twice about using their cars, you've got to make it inconvenient as well as costly.
Yeah.
And so making more roads that make it convenient is actually totally the wrong thing to do.
I don't think you will be seeing roads within towns so much. It will be relief roads. Like in Limassol, we definitely need a north circular road. In Nicosia, we need to complete
But we built the North Circular, and now that's as congested as the lower part of town. I mean, driving through Limassol is a nightmare.
That's a highway, and we have queues in the highway. It's amazing. I mean, recent financial activity has added at least 4,000 car rides in the town lately. So that's why you see all these traffic jams there. So we definitely need to introduce that, but we will. My personal opinion is that we should not be expanding our cities horizontally, which that means adding road networks and stuff like that. We should be rethinking about how we want to live within our city. What's the right ratio of green area to buildable area? How we go around, how we reach a destination. What is public transport? And all this. These are huge questions we all have to answer in the next 10 years max?
Oh, hopefully no longer than that.
Well,
this is the problem, isn't it, that it keeps, in a sense, being put back. And you've touched on things I know we haven't time to cover, which is things like the pollution caused by traffic. It's a huge part of the awful air that we all breathe, and that has an impact on the health sector. I mean, everything is connected, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And I can tell you with certainty that pollution will be the driver of all this. It will not be congestion, it will be pollution, because we have committed as a member state of the European Union that by 2030 we will reduce our carbon footprint, we will reduce pollution. And in order to do that, we need to take cars out of the system, because our pollution is measured by the amount of fuel we consume. So
next time we talk, we will discuss the infrastructure for electric vehicles, which is another of my little bugbears. But I know we can't add that on now, and I think people have had quite a lot to chew over during this conversation. Many thanks for your time.
I'm looking forward to our next discussion. Thank you.
That is our Minister of Transport, Alexis Vafiadis.
Keep up to date with events in Cyprus and around the world with the Cyprus News Digest.
The House Legal Affairs Committee has recently drafted a bill to ban revenge pornography. It's been regulated, of course, already in most of the European Union, but we were trailing behind here in Cyprus. Joining us on this week's programme from the Legal Affairs Committee is the man who proposed the bill, drafted it and so on. He is MP George Koukoumas. George, why haven't we done this before? I find it extraordinary, because we often read in the press about cases and, photographs up skirts and all. It's even happened in Parliament, hasn't it? Why the delay?
Actually, legislation does exist in Cyprus in an article included in the 2021 legislation to combat violence against women. And actually, there is an extremely severe punishment, up to 14 years in prison sentence. But we do need a separate legislation and a much more strong legislation to combat the phenomenon of revenge porn, which is a form of violence and abuse that usually, but not always, not only affects women and girls. Why we need a separate legislation? First of all, because we have to cover and protect all people, all victims, regardless the gender. Now, since the article is incorporated in the legislation for combating the violence against women, we do not protect victims, male victims that are affected by this behavior, the revenge porn. And actually, According to the data provided by the Minister of Justice, of the 65 incidents recorded in Cyprus in the previous 5 years, 17 of them had male victims. That is 1 in 5 incidents. Therefore, the first reason we need a new legislation is to protect every person who falls victim to such an act. Secondly, the legislation, the draft bill Agel table, proposes a much more strict, let's say, regulation to establish a legal obligation for internet, electronic and digital service providers to immediately delete such material. And this is something that must be done immediately because it's crucial to block the dissemination of this material from the very first minutes or hours that has gone out. So, since until now there is a legal gap, and platforms like Facebook and Instagram do it voluntarily, except from Twitter, which actually does not respond on request to delete such material. Our proposal establishes a legal obligation for these services to delete material within 1 hour or after being notified by the police.
Can I ask you, George, explain to us what constitutes revenge porn? Because
yes.
I think you've also widened it, because a lot of people receive these scam emails saying, we've got photographs of you, we're going to publish them on the internet. Well, that's not really revenge porn, is it? That's just a scam that people fall for. But we're talking about something a bit different here, aren't we?
Yes. The behavior under this term, which a bit problematic as a term, but anyway, we'll talk about that later. It's the non-consensual dissemination, mostly online, of intimate or private images and images of a sexual nature obtained with or without consent of the person pictured in the image. The perpetrator of this offense might be an ex-partner who obtains images or videos during a prior relationship and aims to shame and humiliate the victim in retaliation for ending a relationship. However, in many cases, images can be obtained by hacking the victor's computer or social media account or phone, and the perpetrator wants to make damage on the life of a person. So, with easy access to the internet and mobile phones becoming more intelligent, sharing images online has been very quick and straightforward. So the ability to take a photo or video on a smartphone and send it within a matter of seconds has meant that the sharing of such private and sexual materials has become very prevalent in the society. And a study by security software firm McAfee found that 49% of people have sent a sexually motivated photo, text, or video at some point of their lives. Of course, sending nudes or sexting is not illegal when photos or videos are shared between adults that consent to that. But here we're talking about something different, that the victim has not consent to the dissemination of his image, of her image, or videos, etc. And you understand the consequences is the social and psychological consequences for the victim is devastating. It has relation from the family, consequences in the victim's professional life, feelings of depression, emotional trauma, which it can lead even to suicides or attempt to suicide. That's why this crime is classified, is called as cyber rape. And we have to say that revenge porn is on the rise all over the world. Just to tell you that in Cyprus from 2017 to 2022, the police received 65 complaints, while the Safe Internet Center received about 400 complaints in Cyprus about incidents where people send personal photos and then received threats, mainly of financial nature, that the photos would be published. That's why we need a separate legislation and much stronger legislation. Another point, which is in our proposal, it's another gap, let's say, from the existing legislation, is the fact that now, in order to condemn someone, it must first prove that he intended to intimidate or humiliate or harass or cause emotional stress or any other damage to the victim. But as you can understand, the usual excuse of perpetrators who spread such material is, I did it as a joke. I did it because I was hurt because she left me. But I think we all agree that we should not care more about the perpetrator's excuses than the consequences on the victim's life. So we propose to delete the requirement to prove the intention of the perpetrators.
Okay, so anybody who sends anything or in the public domain, unless it has permission, I can't believe anybody would be giving permission to a former partner. Actually, I can't believe that in the first place you would have any of this problem if people just didn't send photographs and got together physically.
Okay, if a couple consent to have a video of this form, okay, they are matter. But if after this intercourse, the man decides to disseminate this video to his friends or to a porn platform, that is a crime and must be punished very severely.
Well, I'm glad to see that I think in the meeting of the Legal Affairs Committee, everybody agreed with this, so that should mean it gets a clear run through the plenum. When will it become law?
Okay, I'll tell you the draft bill, Gel's draft bill, received, as you said, consensus at the committee about the philosophy of the scope of our proposal. But we had some remarks from ministries, state services, independent bodies, and the legal service about the wording of the text in some points. So we will wait to have their suggestions in written, and we will work on it. And I think September or October, we'll continue the discussion in the legal affairs matters, and after that we will go to the plenary to vote it.
So hopefully before the end of the year we will have this on the statute books.
Yes, I am optimistic that even before the end of the year.
One thing we didn't talk about, and I think it's partly because it's already covered to some degree in other legislation, is the fact that this is a bit of a go-to thing for youngsters in school, and I'm talking about teenagers. Tell me a bit about that.
Yes, I have to say that sharing of sexual images without consent is on the rise, including among school-age children. And we have hundreds of complaints in the Safe Internet Center on that. And this is the case all over the world. Just to tell you that even in the United Kingdom, 10% of victims are girls aged 16 years or younger. But when we're talking about minors, we have a different legislation about the child pornography, which is, I think, very good legislation and much more strong than when we are talking about adults. But even in this case, we have to make our legislation as strong as we can.
Are you going to see whether or not the Education Ministry, with its sex education, and we've been hearing about that for months now, is going to tackle this issue and point out to young people in class in school that this is an offence and what the penalties are?
Of course, sexual education is not only about sex, it's not only about abortion and all this. It's about educating young people about values, about behavior, about respect, about gender equality, about combating violence against women, and about having a relationship based on self-respect and respecting the others. And combating this kind of behavior, cyber crimes, digital violence against women, is an integral part of the sexual education.
And is it in the curriculum as it's been drawn up?
I think it has been already in the curriculum, but the problem when we're talking about lyceum and technical schools, this is not incorporated on the curriculum that It's for all students. It's on a voluntary basis. When you apply for certain subject, only if you apply for that, you will have this kind of education.
Well, that's a gap, surely, isn't it, George? I mean, this should be mandatory, should it not, for all young people in school, regardless of the courses that they're following?
That is what we have actually voted last December, to have mandatory sexual education on all levels of education.
You voted it. Is it happening?
We voted it on December 2022, and we are waiting from the Education Ministry to do it. Actually, it's already there for elementary school, but we have to do it for Lyceum as well.
We certainly do, because it's more likely to happen in Lyceum, I would imagine.
Yes.
All right, George, we'll wait to see if this goes through without any further delay when you get back after the summer recess.
I am very optimistic, actually.
Good. Well, I am too. Thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you.
That's Akel MP George Koukoumas telling us about the new legislation he's proposing to cover gaps in the existing legislation on revenge porn. Well, that about wraps up this edition of the Cyprus News Digest. Many thanks for your company. Hope you'll join me next week. Till we meet again, take care and God bless. Bye-bye now.